A lot of people don't know about the Unitarian Church, and I was chatting to somebody recently and trying to explain it to them, and they said, oh, it sounded like a bit of an a la carte religion.
I can understand why people would say that, but that's not the truth. What I would say to people about it being a la carte, you know, it's easier, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody's religion, but it's easier to believe in a simple faith, a faith that is given to you, and you commit to that faith and you don't question it. That's easy. But when you have to create your own theology, when you, Anna, sit down and think, I have to create my theology, my relationship with God, and there's going to be nobody there to tell me how I'm going to do that, that's tough. And the other important part of Unitarianism is it has become the church of exiles. People who have felt hurt by other churches for all different reasons, maybe because they're gay people, have found their way to the Unitarian Church. And they can be comfortably still in touch with their God, be Christian, and nobody's going to challenge them on what they look like, what their sexual orientation is, what color their skin is, what gender they're. That's all between them and God. So Unitarianism allows you go down all those paths, do all those discoveries. It's risky. And of course it's not going to be a huge church, but it's definitely a church that boxes above its weight. Dr. Agnew was the minister in York Street and here for 50 years. And in a little book he wrote for Sunday school, he says it all in the opening paragraph. From the earliest times, some people have liked to be told what to believe. Others have always liked to think for themselves. It is easier to be told what to think than to form our own beliefs. For this reason, those who would think for themselves have always been few. Men also like to walk in well-tried paths, and often they have persecuted the few who are brave enough to explore new ways. The whole history of religion repeats that story.
What am I to do, Lord? The Lord answered, stand up and go into Damascus, and there you will be told what you have been appointed to do.
And look at that, Molly, there, and the follow on there. The light had been so dazzling that I was blind, and my companions had to take me by the hand, and so I came to Damascus.
Chris, this is a wonderful passage of Scripture, because really it's your life and my life. Because God is always asking us, what do you want me to do for you? And then we say, Lord, what do you want me to do for you?
Instead of asking me to go to Damascus, he asked me to go to Belfast.
Belfast, you see.
Yeah.
And you see, his ways are wonderful. I was with Chris's mother when she was having Chris, bringing him into the world. I had done my midwifery then, and I was able to hold him in my hands and really say, well, God bless you. You're a wonderful little boy, and give him back to his mum. Well, Chris, he was all vivacious, full of life, and maybe you'd say bold, and would stand on the stairs and answer back, you know, but loving.
How would you describe Chris's faith?
He was on the communist side, and he was nothing. And he was then, here he was, studying to be a minister in the Church of God, really. And then when he said he was going to be ordained a minister, would I go? I gave him the biggest hug I could find possible in my arm. And I said, of course I'll come. I just said, Lord, your ways are wonderful.
My mother, she was 98 years of age. Literally 3 or 4 days before she died, when we thought she was slipping away. We were all gathered round her, the whole family. And my Aunt Molly, who's a Franciscan nun, and myself, were saying a few prayers around her. And we saw her breath get lower and lower, as if she was just about to slip away. And suddenly her eyes opened, up she popped, and she said, "I'd like a cup of tea and some bread and butter." And I said, "Mum, I thought you were dying." And she said, "I'm doing my best," and went back down again. And I turned to my Aunt Molly and I said to her, "I think these prayers aren't working, whatever prayers we're saying." There's a road in Glasstool called Hudson Road. It's called after my uncle, my late uncle, Joseph Hudson, who was killed there during the Irish Civil War. He was on the Republican side, and my uncle Joseph and my dad were in the back garden of their house, and they were looking at this old gun when there was a raid by the Free State Army, and they opened fire, and Joe was hit and died 3 days later. We would have seen my uncle as heroic. And my grandfather was an old IRA man, so my grandfather was even a bigger hero. So as a youngster, up until probably the age of 13 or 14, I would have subscribed to it. And eventually, like, my father was one of the founding members of the Fianna Fáil party. And it even led to the local Fianna Fáil Common being called the Joseph Hudson Common after my uncle. But later on, I would have probably said things to him, maybe that could have been even a bit cruel, where I would have said, "Well, look, you know, if you have a gun in the backyard and the army comes in, what else are they going to do? Only shoot." I think I was a little bit unreasonable.
Tell me what your father said to you when you said you were going to leave Catholicism.
Now, my father didn't speak to me for about 4 or 5 days. And then eventually when he did, he said, "I don't mind you turning your back on the Catholic Church, but not on the family politics." Republicanism was his real religion rather than the Catholic faith. I mean, that might be unfair. He was a good Catholic as well. He was a fairly devout Catholic. But I think to some extent he believed that De Valera walked on water.